We do have our guest Derek coming on, so we're going to bring him on right now. Derek, thank you for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Derek, the man of the hour, the viral. Wow, Derek, I don't know if you guys expected it to go as viral as it did, but it certainly did. It was on every single channel and print
News,
media, and
broadcasts,
whatever it
everything.
was. And we covered it too, obviously. So great job. But first, introduce yourself and tell us who and what Consumer Reports is and does.
Sure. So I'm Derek Kravitz. I'm a deputy editor of special projects at Consumer Reports. You probably know Consumer Reports from our auto work over the last 90 years, but a nonprofit headquartered in Yonkers, New York, so upstate from New York City where I live. And we do a lot of testing. So Uber and Lyft, this is right up our alley. We wanted to see if some of the price strategies that we saw that you guys have tested with respect to drivers and More Perfect Union, if we could see some of that on the consumer side. So we spent months investigating this, both doing virtual testing and then also in-person testing with union-affiliated drivers in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah. Okay. So we always said, I mean, we have proven it over and over since we've been doing the show for 4 years. Algorithmic wage discrimination exists. I'm not saying it's discrimination due to race, gender, and any of that stuff, but it does exist, okay? And we've proven it, and now you guys are kind of proving that not wage, but algorithmic discrimination exists actually on the rider side. And so how did you guys what did you guys do to do the test like? What was the test like?
That's a good question. So, and you're having Len Sherman come on later, or maybe speaking to some of his work. You know, whenever we do testing like this, we did something similar with Instacart. We also did work on Kroger, the grocery chain, and a lot of this work looks very similar in the sense that we, with our statistician, in-house statistician team, and then also outside experts and consultants, we design a methodology, right? And so we try to control for as much as we possibly can and answer like a big question, why do riders see different prices, and how big are the differences between, say, the lowest and the highest price groups that you might see for an individual ride. Same methodology we use with Instacart. And so we consulted with, I think, about 8 different subject matter experts, including Len, to sort of design this. Katie Wells was one of our close working partners there. She's with AI Now Institute. And with the virtual testing, what we decided to do was convene as many people as we could get on recorded Zoom video, 33 to 65 people at any given time, and have them basically price out rides at the same time. Before we actually logged on, we had them submit to us demographic and usage intake forms. All that's to say, we had them give us as much information about themselves as we possibly could, with privacy being a component of all of that. So making sure that we delete all this at the end of the testing, but ask them, race, gender, age, where they live, billing zip code, things of that sort, and then usage too. So how they use Uber and Lyft. Is it frequently, infrequently? Because we know behavior and context data is important to these companies, and the patents bear that out. We do a full patent search whenever we do this type of work as well. So we get all these people, in Zooms, we have them price out predetermined routes. We did 30 routes across the country, 15 for Uber, 15 for Lyft. We looked at 17 different states. We looked at urban, rural, cross city, cross county, cross state lines, different times of the day, different days of the week. A lot of this is trying to capture, moments in time, but really, capture many different multiple moments in time to sort of understand the constellation of data out there for rideshare. And then we take all that in, we get all the screenshots back, we analyze that both. We have an automated system and then a human in the loop system. We run, a bunch of different regressions and statistical sort of analyses on all of that data. And then we did the in-person part, because it's not as you can look at algorithmic pricing, in a vacuum and, virtually, but it's really important to see how this plays out, in real life, right? If you're ordering trips and taking them with drivers. So we wanted to do that. We wanted to do that in a place that was somewhat sort of controlled in a unique way, like Portland, with a per minute per mile sort of traditional taxi rate card system. And we wanted to match, Katie Wells came up with this methodology. We wanted to match volunteer riders with volunteer drivers in the same place at the same time, and then take rides together collectively, with the understanding that there's going to be lots of caveats and limitations here. The potential for creating an artificial surge or demand, or not matching with our group and having to re-request, which happened. Or various other issues, lots of troubleshooting, lots of user error. That's all fine. Like we want to see that user error. We want to take that in, and then exclude those when we can, and then understand the data we're seeing. So when we got all the data back, pretty clear the price variability for Uber and Lyft can be very large. The median was 42.4%. That's a conservative figure between the lowest and the highest price groups that our volunteer riders saw across all 30 routes. And then in person, we were able to use that to develop sort of a take rate percentage, which I know the companies dispute. They have a lot of different reasons for disputing that. We put that in the story as well. We shared all of our data with the companies, stripping out the PII, the person identifiable information. And that take rate percentage was just like what Len and Princeton and others have found, which is in that 43 to 49.5% percentage rate for Uber and Lyft in terms of how much they take from each fare.
Yeah.
And we also found the fake discounts. We found in about 12% of cases, artificially inflated, original prices, strike-throughs, which they don't call discounts, they call historical comparison messaging. And then a new price, and we saw in about 12% of advertised discounts, those were fictitious.
Yeah. Well, there's another thing. I mean, look, you said 42%, by the way. That's for the exact same trip for the exact same distance, right? And that kind of thing.
Yes. That is the most conservative, and everything we do is the most. I mean, Consumer Reports is an old brand. We want we want to make sure that we're being fair, and we don't want to get sued out of existence. So, in that way, we want to make sure that we do everything by the book, and that's what we did here. And so, 42.4%. That's a conservative number.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, this was about to look. I mean, there's one thing Uber hates the most. Okay, that's bad publicity. That they just hate it, and we do a great job at it, and you guys now, obviously. But so the results are out. Pretty much every channel in the country is running it. They're doing their own testing now, sitting in a room, which I did with CBS LA, and same results and stuff like that. So what did the good folks at Uber and Lyft say about your test? Did they say it's a bunch of bullshit, or what they say?
In a lot of ways, tech companies, and I'm, I know rideshare is a different, beast and type of industry within tech than say grocery or others. But in many ways, tech companies operate very, similar to each other across the board. And so when we do, corporate outreach, when we share our limited data and our questions to companies, in many cases, when we do testing, they ask us a lot of questions first and foremost. And so we went, I think, several weeks of questions from Uber and Lyft about what we did. And we answered those. And then we started asking our own questions. And we probably 4 to 5 rounds of questions, probably 40 to 50. A lot of that information does make it into the story in terms of response. But in short, and this, you've talked about this on this podcast and elsewhere, but in short, both companies say no two rides can ever truly be the same. There's no baseline price. This is second to second prices change, and it's an extremely complex marketplace where supply and demand sort of rule the day. And we do not personalize base prices ever. That's their line, right? There's an additional element there too that you have to pull out and parse out which is that they do personalize promotions and discounts, and both companies increasingly use promotions and discounts for all rides, right? And not only do they use promotions and discounts in the strict sense, right? How a a reduction of an original price to a new price, but they also have these labels, this historical comparison messaging. Prices are lower right now, or lower, or faster, or cheaper. Informational labels. They don't call those promotions and discounts. We call them that. And when we looked at, again, all of our 1,100 different rides across all the 30 virtual routes, 50% of them had a promotion or discount that we would define as a promotion or discount attached to them, which means if they're using that more and more, and the data from UNLV and others bears this out, what is a true net price, right? Algorithmic pricing has created a new sort of pricing structure in retail that you can't really rely on one price as the price, right? It's many, many different prices.
Well, there is. I mean, if you look at the history of Uber, which I know probably better than anybody, I'm a driver as well as a rider, by the way, right? I use Uber quite often, and I drive for Uber, and so we had something called a rate card, Derek, meaning just like a cab man, a meter. The meter in the cab, you just turn it on, and that's the meter, dollars. The time and distance. And about 4 years ago, I remember it like today, actually. About 4 years ago, Uber stock was dead in the water after the pandemic. Some brilliant person at Uber came up with this thing called upfront fares for drivers, and rate cards went away. There's no more rate card. So if there was rate card, right, there wouldn't be a discrepancy for the same trip at the same time, at the same distance, at the same duration. There wouldn't be. But now with algorithmic black box algorithms running pricing literally by the millisecond, looking into probably 50 different things that they look into. Now you have the potential of charging as much as you can and paying as little as you can, because there's two separate algorithms that they're running, one for the rider and one for the driver. And that's when Uber stock went from 23 to 123 in about 4 years. That's when the take rate that they say is still, by the way, it's just 19%, but we're not making more money. I'm like, well, how did you become a free cash flow cow? I'm not even sure, right? And they're throwing around $7 to $10 billion free cash flow every year. But that's the economics of it. That's what I know, and that's what I will always say. So Uber said, to our test, Uber also said not enough sample size. Did they say that to you as well?
They said that they actually didn't point to an issue with the sample size here. 174 volunteers, and that's actually quite small in statistical terms. But a lot of our work is in statistical parlance, participatory action research. So it doesn't have to solve for every equation that we can dream up. It has to answer one question. In this case, why do people get different prices at the same time, the same exact route? And so we, what they did say is that both companies said our methodology was flawed in their view. And more to the point, they said that you can't really test their black boxes externally. That I think Uber came up with an offer for us to do testing with them, with an agreed upon academic institution, and in which they could test with all of their back end sort of view, which includes latency and GPS signal and all of these things that they say that factors into pricing. But we want to, of course, we're Consumer Reports. We want to see the consumer-facing side of it, what real people deal with on a day-to-day basis. And if many of our rides were caught within 6 minutes of each other, but many of them were caught within the same minute.
Yep.
And so that's what we wanted the control for, was time, because we know time is such a big component and element of this. So anyway, that's in short.
That's interesting. They offered you to do the test with you, huh? Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
And one thing I'll just flag there, legal disclaimer, but Consumer Reports doesn't partner with companies to do testing.
Why would you?
Yeah, we independent nonprofit, even for vehicles. This is a long running thing. We buy the vehicles. We're not given the vehicles, and then we test the vehicles off the lot. So it's, and you have to do that, otherwise the auto manufacturers are going to give you the best possible version of that vehicle. So there's a reason for it.
One thing I always say is work smarter, not harder. If you aren't using the Solo app, then you may be working harder. So let's change that. Download the app, link your accounts where you can manage your income, track your expenses, and project your taxes. Not only that, but you can plan by optimizing your time, make more, and even guarantee your daily pay with guaranteed earnings. Download Solo and begin to work smarter, not harder today. Link is in the description. All right, let's get back to it.
So full disclosure, Uber is watching this today, so okay?
Probably.
Not probably. I can guarantee they watch every show. And
Sure.
Hey, people at Uber, nice people. So Uber was that. How about Lyft? Lyft, you tested for Lyft as well. Was there like a major discrepancy? Because on our test at CBS, Lyft was the bigger discrepancy actually between trips. And the other thing maybe you can talk about is between the pricing between Uber and Lyft, right? Because a lot of riders don't comparison shop, which I always do because I have both apps. If I'm going to take a ride, I mean, if one is cheaper by $5, I'm going to take that one.
Yeah,
because they both do the same thing, point A to point B, right? So what were the findings in that area?
We didn't find much difference between Uber and Lyft in terms of comparison shopping and price differential there. That said, I mean, there's been, good academic work. I think a 14% reduction in price for Lyft compared to Uber. I saw in one study, I think out of Chicago. But in essence, we saw the same things with Uber and Lyft. And that's why we wanted to look at both companies. This wasn't a go after Uber story or investigation. This was a rideshare investigation. They control 95% of the US market. As Len would say, they're a duopoly. So we wanted to go with the biggest market participants. There are others. I mean, I'm sure I'm speaking to the CEO of Tada. I think they actually go by a different name now. A Singaporean company that I think has as many as 30,000 signups of New York City drivers, and they have sort of an initial licensure with New York City's Taxi and Limousine Commission. They're promising sort of a flat rate commission model where regardless of the ride, the $3 or $5 goes to the platform and the rest goes to the driver. So, I mean, there are others. I was just speaking to, someone who invested early in Zimride, years ago, which I guess was a precursor to Lyft. I mean, Via Israeli company.
Grab. You're probably talking about Grab from Asia. There's another company that's taken a lot of chips from Uber, especially in New York City, Empower, right?
Yes.
Although they're kind of running like a pirate cab. I'm not sure what's going on there. Okay, so you did the test come out, Uber says what they're going to say, okay. So what is this going? Like, what's the next? What's next? What are you guys, I mean, is this one and done or what's happening?
So none of our pricing projects are ever done.
Okay.
Even with Instacart, we looked at them 6-7 months ago, and we're still fielding tips about them. As long as companies, and basically our metric or our framing for why we look at particular industries, and not even just particular companies, but industries, is do they use a lot of algorithmic pricing, and are consumers operating in an information vacuum, or is there transparency to what the prices that they're seeing? And do they find it to be unfair? And when we survey them, we actually have a survey department, and they do statistically significant surveys. They poll 2,000 US adults across the country and ask them these questions. And they carry weight because it's, again, controls for a lot of things and is weighted for demographics. And they find that people do not like algorithmic pricing. They find it difficult to sort of understand and parse out. And they certainly don't like their personal data to be used to dictate personalized pricing, whether that's for base prices or promotions and discounts. So that's why we look at these industries and companies, and we'll continue to do so.
I mean, algorithmic pricing existed way before Uber, right? I mean, airlines use it. A lot of companies use it. And as you know, there was this, the Wendy's debacle that they were going to use it on hamburgers, and that went like nuts. And then Walmart uses it. Sometimes they have these digital tags changing pricing. I'm like, what is happening in this country? You know what I mean? And I do agree with the consumer. And one reason I think Uber probably hated this as much as they did is because this is rider based, right? So there's about 4.5, 5 million drivers in the country, part-time, full-time, active drivers, but there's about 160 million Uber app users in the country, from food to anything that, rideshare and whatever not. And the rider is the golden goose that pays the golden egg. I mean, that lays the golden egg. I mean, it's just, and they're not going to like it. And then if you wake up the consumer saying, wait a minute, why am I getting ripped off? Like, why is this guy sitting next to me paying $5 less than I'm doing it? And that could hurt their business. I think that probably is the reason that they were kind of,
and like one thing to note here, when we do pilot and beta testing, and we talk to the companies too, if for whatever reason we saw, I think in some testing we saw, A/B testing with a few cents difference between, large fare rides or, within 5%, everything sort of being mostly uniform, we probably wouldn't do a large investigation into an industry or company like this. So that's all to say, when you see this degree of variability, that's why, right? That's why Consumer Reports or other places look at that so closely.
Yeah. So I had Jamie Court of Consumer Watchdog on a couple of weeks before your guest spot, and we talked about what they've been kind of going after, which is as soon as, I think the year they went public, they created these captive insurance companies. Both companies have it, by the way, Lyft and Uber. And then for some reason they're in Hawaii. I don't know why. But as drivers, we notice a lot of things here, right? Because my eyes and ears are drivers literally from all over the globe, from Australia, from UK, and all 50 states, all cities. What drivers have noticed is that commercial insurance rates have gone through the roof over the last 4 or 5 years, to the tune of 4x, pretty much. And what are your thoughts about it? Do you have any thoughts about that? That they're kind of moving the money around, and but then on one hand, they're also complaining to legislators to lower commercial insurance rates because they're saying it's 40% of the trip is commercial insurance. What is your thought? Are you going to do anything about that?
It's an interesting sort. When we and researchers and others sort of calculate take rate, we include the commercial auto insurance, and when Uber and Lyft do, they don't. And there's a different, and we tried to explain that as clearly as we could in the story.
How do you explain that? Actually, you know what? That's a good point, because every time I talk to my Uber buddies, they go, Serge, we only take 20% because we take out commercial insurance, government, city taxes, and airport fees, blah, 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 blah. Bro, I understand. But if I'm a driver and I see the receipt, rider paid 100, I made 40, you took 60%. That's all I know.
Yeah. So we put it into 3 different buckets and try, again, for a lay audience, like tried to make that demystified as much as possible. I mean, did we succeed? I'm not sure, but it's very technical stuff. And we went through a lot of SEC reports and consulted with accountants to sort of figure that part out. But in short, you have the platform take. So whatever the platform takes in, regardless of, the expenses or where it ends up going internally, right? So whatever Uber and Lyft take in, whatever the driver takes, separate from tips, right? And then whatever goes to city or government agencies for fees, airport, et cetera. That's a third bucket. And so then when we're just looking at platform and driver, that is what we calculate. And that's what researchers, by and large, James Parrott, Len, many others that have written books on this subject, that's how they calculate it as well. Because it's, the gross net revenue argument, they've made that argument to the SEC. And when they file their annual reports, they do call themselves a agent and not a principal. And they're hiring, drivers as independent contractors, right? So they're saying they operate as an agent taking commission. And so that's their argument. And, even though we disagree in terms of how we describe it, that's a valid argument, and that's why we included that fully in the story. But yeah, that's why, when we look at take rate, and you see the trend line going up and up and up over time, especially since the IPO. It sort of is what it is, right? You can't really, you can sort of try to parse out or take away one element of it, but at the end of the day, it's how much the driver receives of each fare is sort of what we're looking at closely, and that is trending downwards as a percentage.
Yeah, our community agrees 100%. Take rate is you pay 50, I make 20, you took 60. That's it, 60%. That's it. That's what I know. That's as simple as math, but then we can talk about that forever with Uber.
Right.
A quick question comes to mind when it comes to commercial insurance rates. You said you ordered all these hundreds of thousands of trips, right? To look into data, to gather data. Did you, because we're going to have a segment right after yours, did you see a drastic difference on the identical length and duration trips in commercial insurance rates?
It's a very good question. And, you'll probably get to this with Len's Syracuse example, which I think is sort of cool. Same guy doing
coming up
100 rides, the same route. So virtually, remember, we're looking at offers. We're not actually executing or taking trips, right? But in the in-person testing, we were. We tried to control for as much as we can, but Uber and Lyft do note, trip duration and distance. That said, routes were almost identical in every case in terms of, distance and duration. One, and I'm happy to disclose this, I don't think this is an issue. After publication, we didn't provide them personally identifiable information of our volunteers. For many different reasons, but the core one is it's to protect their privacy. That's part of the agreement when they work with us and volunteer their time to help us with these participatory research studies. And same thing with drivers. And in fact, with drivers, I'm very conscious of deactivation and want that to happen. And we worked closely with drivers. Union in Oregon to be as fair as we possibly could be and disclose who we're working with, et cetera. But we did not disclose the identities, the phone numbers or the accounts to Uber and Lyft when we shared our data with them.
Yeah.
And publicly, when we posted all of our data on GitHub, where it lives now, we don't post that information. And I think that's common practice actually in journalism. But the company Uber was able to reverse engineer all of that data using what I presume to be Godview, and we're able to re-identify everyone, and we're able to point to 3 specific examples of user error, aside from all the other user errors we excluded, in terms of inputting the wrong address, or I think in one case they had a reserve trip, Uber Reserve, as opposed to sort of a base trip. Or a tradition, a normal Uber trip, not a scheduled one. All that's to say, we actually had to exclude those after publication. So we excluded those, and we put a note at the bottom of the story. But they were able to do that without our consent.
Yeah, they have 33,000 people there, and they're all doing something. I don't know. I mean, look, they have brilliant people obviously working there, and I'm not going to question that. They're brilliant. Yeah. But our problem, look, Derek, our problem is fairness, right? I mean, look, I'm a capitalist. I was on Wall Street for 30 years as a trader. Money talks, BS walks. Okay, I understand, but then the fairness has to come into play at some point. I'm not a vulture capitalist, okay? I'm just a fair capitalist. You just got to be fair here. And I think the drivers are getting shafted, bottom line, and I think the riders are getting shafted. Both sides are getting shafted. They're burning the candle on both ends. Well, we did it on the driver side. You guys did it on the, on the rider side. It's a very dangerous thing to burn the candle on both ends. Your candle is not going to go too far. And so, I can talk to you all day long, and we'll have you back again, I'm sure. But is there anything that you want to tell us in closing?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for having me. I mean, the only thing I'd add, and, just stepping up back like 30,000 foot view, companies obviously, can participate, in a digital marketplace, and the marketplace sort of works itself out in terms of supply, demand, and pricing and all of that. I think when we talk to both riders and drivers, it's the lack of transparency that they have the most trouble with.
Yeah.
When we talk to them, and again, this is not us Consumer Reports saying it, this is when we speak to every volunteer and every driver we talk to, they say the same thing. If we knew exactly what went into this, if we knew all of the attributes that went into personalized promotions and discounts, if we knew everything that went into the type of signals they're using, whether that's behavior or context or account history, ride history, etc. We see that in patents. That bears it out. We actually cited a lot of those, but I think for a lot of people, just understanding that or knowing that more, I think would put them at ease, or at least give them more information in which to operate in.
Yeah, it's a price of convenience that we pay as a consumer, right? And most of us don't have an idea how complicated this is in the back end. You push a button, something shows up, car shows up, your dog walker shows up, your food shows up, whatever shows up. But then there's work that gets done. And these companies being in the middle, I mean, it's pretty obvious their take rates have gone through the roof over the last 5-6 years. And, look, I'm not against them making money, obviously, but then don't rip me off, Uber. That's my message. So, and Derek, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. And if you do any further testing about anything, you know where to find me. So
thank you both. Really appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Thank you, Derek.
All right, thanks for watching. That short little clip was from our live stream, Show Me the Money Club, with Sergio and myself, Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you subscribe, turn on all notifications so you get notified when we go live, as well as all of our awesome content. Make sure to check out this video right here, which will take you to the entire live stream, or check out this video right there. All right, drive smart, everyone.